Guys, without further ado, we bring on former New York Islander and current New York Islander analyst, Mr. Cal Clutterbuck. Cal, if the chances are, if you played in the NHL, you hit him over the course of your career, having the most hits in the NHL over the last it's 18 years. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Cal. Anthony here. So I want to start off with, similar to Thomas Hickey, you came on MSG and you hit the ground running. You were excellent there in that role, which leads me to the question, you were a guy that competed so hard night in and night out. How was the transition of having that, routine where you're with the guys getting ready for games to, not playing and going into this role?
Well, quite honestly, I was the decision to not play. I didn't really take that lightly. It was really time for me to not play anymore. And I think I said it a year or two before I actually ended up retiring. Is I felt like I knew when it was going to be time for me to stop playing before anyone else would know. I just felt like it was, it was a combination of things. My body, which is fine. It's just like it was at a point where I was pushing the envelope a little bit, and then, situationally, it just it didn't look like it was going to be what I wanted it to be. So I just decided it was time. So it wasn't that difficult for me to pop in. It was actually kind of a relief for me to get in there, and it gave me a reason to go right back into the games and go right back into the rink and stay visible and stay a part of it. And it did make me feel like I had like I had a little skin in the game still, which was probably the most important thing for me, being out of the game, fresh for a year. So I think when you get out of the game, you're tired and you just want to break from it. And I think if I would have taken a full year break, it would have been more difficult than what it ended up being.
Cal, how differently is it now? Like you talked about the adjustment you made. How differently is it now for you, like watching the game from the booth as opposed to being on the ice? You find yourself saying things like, "Oh, well, maybe the puck should have been there, or this guy should have been there." Like, do you find yourself criticizing it from like a player perspective at times?
Oh, all the time. I mean, that's how we look at the game. We look at the game from the eyes of your own perspective, and I think you look at it in a lot of ways with just I would have done XYZ there, or you like to think you would have anyway. I think what happens is if you've missed enough time playing in the league and you've spent some time in the press box watching, or if you've been a healthy scratch, or if you're sitting out with injury and you go upstairs and you watch, I think it's a really good exercise for people because you can see the game kind of as a whole. When you play it every day, all you see is the ice level view, and compare your seats at ice level behind the net to your seats like at the red line 15 rows up. You're watching two different games, and you can see at ice level nothing looks available, and at the red line level everything looks available. So it's, the answer really is somewhere in between. And the fans always get the perspective of either watching on TV or watching live. And luckily for me, I have the experience of being out there and knowing, that it doesn't look like there's all that open ice out there when you're out there with a bunch of bodies moving around. So, you have to be mindful of that. I think you have to try and do your best to maintain your sort of remember what it was like to play when you're formulating an opinion about a certain play or a certain player.
Cal, I can't help but reflect on your time with the identity line, and that you guys, you, Casey, and Matt were just electric together. Matt then went to Toronto, and then he came back, and you guys didn't even miss a beat. I look at this stat. I saved this for you. You guys played over 45 hours together of ice time. That is incredible. And also, I love the stats about the hits. You and Matt, you guys ever in the middle of games go, I can drop more people than you?
No. We actually never paid attention. We never paid attention to that stat at all. I never looked at the sheet at the end of the game. I think for me, I'm a bit of an old school type of player. I think you should have a pretty good feeling for how you played when you come off the ice, as a player. And even especially if you go and rewatch it, there might be a couple games where you're not sure you played all that well. But you go back and watch it, and sometimes you're like, yeah, I know what I hit my spots and I played well, and I never let the score sheet dictate my opinion of my own game. And if you're gonna ask me honestly, like the number's 4,000 and something, I probably like as far as body contact and hits go, it's probably 4 times that number. So, for me, it wasn't like there was no 65-year-old man wearing an NHL blazer sitting in the press box of any arena that was gonna tell me whether I hit or didn't hit a guy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's great that I ended up racking them up the way I did, but to be honest, I just I never looked at the game sheet because I had a pretty good feeling for when I left the rink how I played. I knew whether I was good or I was garbage.
I know your group, you made it to the conference final, but not the final. That second year when you lost to Tampa Bay again, did you have that mindset of like, we're just not going to be able to get past these guys, or how did you try to compartmentalize how to take that next step? Because I feel like the Oilers are in that same boat right now.
I think our situation and the Oilers situation they're a little different. Because what I will say is that even when Tampa beat us the second year, it didn't feel like it felt like we lost on an extra bounce. Okay. Edmonton didn't lose on an extra bounce. They were beaten, and maybe in the COVID year we were beaten and we felt like we got beat. So, you could say, we lost in game 6 in OT, but the truth of the matter is, even if that series goes 7, I still think Tampa wins that series. They were more healthy. They were probably a year ahead of us. The second year, I felt like we lost it on a bounce. I really don't think that. I think you could flip a coin at that one any day of the week, and you get what you get. And that was more difficult than maybe more hopeful, but also more difficult than getting beat 2 years in a row handily, sort of like game 7, not handily, but you don't forget Florida had a 3-0 lead. And I don't know if that series was ever, it would have been a miracle if Edmonton won last year. This year is a different story. And then, you get to that game 5 and Florida just puts their foot on the gas and proves to be too much. And I think that's what you look at Connor McDavid's comments last night. I think that's what he's feeling, that frustration of like, we actually just weren't good enough. And, if you watch every minute of that series, you just felt like it was just a matter of time before Florida just kind of took it over. And so I think they're the best team in the game, and I think I'm glad they won because they deserve to win. I mean, they've been the best team in the game for at least 2 years, and they've been trending that way. They have a perfect mix of a little bit of everything, and they're able to kind of go year over year. I'll be interested to see how they do next year. There might be a little fatigue that comes into it next year for them, but I just think the fabric of that team is the standard for winning a Stanley Cup in today's game. But again, the players that they have are not they're very, very hard to come by. Especially at the numbers that that they have met,
Yeah, that's definitely something.
I do agree with you that second year, you guys, which by the way, when the Lightning reacquired Yanni Gord, it gave me PTSD. Going back to that team. But if I remember correctly, that was the year Lee was out. Like, you feel like if Lee was if you had him for that year, that you would have, he'd have been that one guy to maybe get that one goal and tie the game, a 1-1 game, or made a difference there.
That's just a really difficult question because I think without him being out, there's a couple guys who also aren't in the lineup. You look at like Palmieri and Zajac. If Anders' contract is not on long-term injury at that point, we don't get those two guys. There's a lot of things that go into that. So that's I don't think that question actually has an answer. Would we have loved to have him out there? For sure. But he tore that thing in like January or whatever it was, or maybe even February, and the playoffs started in May. So, as incredible as he is and as hard as he worked on that rehab, there was no way he was making it back. So, I think those things just shake down so differently if that doesn't happen. But it did. So it is what it is.
Cal, speaking of which, with physical play and everything like that, one of our viewers here was asking, you've been one of the most durable, hard-hitting players in the league for a long time. What was your key to staying effective for as long as you did, playing such a physical style of hockey?
I don't know. I was just good at it. I don't know. I mean, I have good timing. I have a really good ability to transfer my weight. My body type is like very abnormal. I'm short and very stocky, which gives me a lot of power from the ground. And I just developed a way to hit people that didn't put that much stress on my body. And I was always aware where everyone was on the ice because I had a target on my back from the time I was 16 years old. It's just kind of how I played. So I was very aware of where everyone was on the ice and who was trying to get me and who wasn't. And I developed the ability to kind of counter hit. I'm sure you've seen a lot of clips of that where I kind of just pretend to put my head down and have somebody charge me, and then I just kind of like stiffen up and reverse them at the last minute, and so people just stopped trying to get me, I think. And the other part of that too is that the effectiveness of my game really comes from um, my ability to go out there and play against good offensive players. Like I can go out and kill penalties probably better than most. And I can go out there and play against the best players. And I can, Casey, Marty, and I, not just we can go out there and essentially play keep away with the puck, from them for a long period of time. And when they do get the puck, I think the three of us were smart enough players to go and defend them properly, which allowed our better players to go out there and try and win the battle against lines, 2, 3, and 4 on the other side, which was a huge thing for a team. And so my effectiveness and my longevity was more due to my ability to think through the game and know my job and just do that very well. So the physical play was always going to be there, but you have to be smart about that too.
Cal, let's shift a little bit to the current New York Islanders right now, who just named Matthew Darsh as the GM. Lou did a fantastic job bringing this team to a level that they haven't been to in almost 30 years, being a back-to-back in the conference finals. But what kind of stamp do you see Darsh putting on this team?
It's hard to say. I don't know him very well. I actually don't know him at all. So I guess you'll just have to wait and see. I think obviously he was around the construction or sort of, a large part of that Tampa Bay team. So he's got a pretty good idea for who they were and how they were built. There's an issue. The only issue with that is that like they had some extremely talented players, all kind of matched up in that lineup, which can take years to kind of accumulate. But I think the Islanders are actually in a pretty good position, and you've got a chance. If you want to ask the question, you've got a chance to pick first overall here, and then you've got a couple guys you've chosen the last last year and the year before who look like they're going to be NHL ready. The question to me is, you have to make sure that their development is sort of not too fast, but not too slow. They have to come in, and you can't expect them to be the difference maker in year one, but maybe by years 2 and 3, they're ready to fully assume that role. And it's we'll see. But he's a young guy. I think he's got fresh ideas. Lou's done a great job of laying the groundwork and the foundation for what the culture is around here. And so hopefully he can maintain that and sort of add maybe a little a fresher sort of approach and mindset.
Now, Cal, with that first overall pick, the consensus is Matthew Schaefer, but obviously I'm sure James Higgins is from Long Island. There's a lot of Islander fans trying to have the movement for him to be the pick. I don't. Have you seen the bumper stickers "Bring Higgins Home" out on Long Island that are floating around? But how do you weigh that? This was a guy that was the first ranked prospect for almost a whole year and then kind of dropped. So when you're weighing who to select, is he, in your mind, do you think he would still be a reach to select at 1, or do you got to go Matthew Schaefer?
Well, they always say bet with your head, not your heart. So I think if you're really looking at your opportunity, if you're sitting at 3 or 4, and he's ranked 5, then there's probably a little bit of reason to do that. The bigger issue is that defensemen are very, very hard to find. Elite level defensemen are very, very, very hard to find. And you've basically been given a gift and the opportunity to get one for nothing. having played the game and having seen teams that succeed, one defenseman can change the ability of an entire hockey team. We've seen it time and time again. Two defensemen have the chance of turning a 500 team into a Stanley Cup contender. And I think the situation you're in with the Islanders is that I think they've got plenty of talent at the forward position to get done what they want to get done. You got the current talent. I would say a little bit of a changing of the guard with Brock Nelson headed out. But if you're going to really consider things, you've got Cal Ritchie kind of sliding into that spot, assumedly. If he's not able to even slide into that spot, you've still got a combination of Barzal and Horvat in 1-2 in the middle, and then you can play him in the 3 slot if you want, or you could play him on the wing for a couple of weeks or months or whatever you need. You've got Yzerman coming in, and you're going to have the ability to probably have, a couple other forwards you've drafted in the last 3 or 4 years come and make an impact on the lineup. Defensively, it's a little bit of a different story. Not only do you need to fill that cupboard, but I think you need, picture what Zach Werenski does for a franchise. If the Columbus Blue Jackets don't have Zach Werenski, they're just an average team. When he's in the lineup and they're healthy, they're actually kind of a problem. Not a contender for the Stanley Cup, but kind of a problem. You saw them the whole year push for that 8 spot, for the 7 spot. They were, overachieving in a lot of ways, and that's due in large part to Zach Werenski. So I think a defenseman, right shot defenseman especially, but either way, left or right-handed defenseman with the type of potential and ceiling that a kid like that has, and not only that, the kid, I've talked to a lot of people about it, seems to be one of the most mentally advanced and mature kids you're going to find. In a situation like this, and not to offend anybody, but the kids who are in that position a lot of times these days have a little different mindset, let's just say, than when the kids my when I was growing up. They're different, and it's not an opinion, it's just a fact. And I think this kid is a little bit of a throwback when it comes to maturity and humility and being willing to work for what he gets. So I think it's a home run to take the D-man. And I feel badly, like it would be great if they can land Hagens too, but I think there might be another backdoor event that leads to that versus not taking Schaefer at 1.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.